The Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has condemned what he calls Israel's genocide in Gaza and repeated that his people will not abandon their land.
He spoke to the UN General Assembly via video link after he and his delegation were denied visas to attend in person. Mr. Abbas doubled down on his desire for a two-state solution to end the conflict, vowing that rival Hamas would have no role in the post-war governance of the territory. The leader also called for an immediate ceasefire, free entry of humanitarian aid through UN organizations, and Israel's withdrawal from Gaza.
Israel has rejected the allegations of genocide. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is set to address the assembly later today. Well, joining us for more is Gregory Treverton. He's professor of the practice of international relations and spatial sciences at the University of Southern California. Professor, good to have you with us on the show again. So we heard there Mahmoud Abbas tried to build on this growing recognition of Palestinian statehood, saying we won't leave, and promising that Hamas would have no role in Gaza. But I'm wondering, how do you see Israel and the US reacting to this message? Because they arguably are the two most important players in this.
Yeah, no, it's a very paradoxical period because we've had these good words from European countries and others recognizing Palestinian state. So that's been positive. On the other hand, there's no evidence that Netanyahu and the Israeli government are prepared to consider it. They haven't ever really, and they've been doing things to make it less and less possible that there could be some Palestinian state. So it seems to me that for all the good vibes and good rhetoric, the idea of a Palestinian state is just not going to happen. And we know in the past that the Arab countries have been willing to do anything for a Palestinian state except fight for it. And so this seems to me to be good symbolism, but probably not more than that. We do have the continuation of what we've seen for the last months, and that is Israel giving itself no real alternative but occupying Gaza. And that then raises the questions about what happens to all the people there. And they've also been increasing the settlements on the West Bank. So while the president said good words about not letting them annex the West Bank, it looks like the situation on the ground is really moving very much in that direction, with Israeli occupation of both Gaza and an increasing presence on the West Bank.
And Professor, I want to get your thoughts on what Mr. Abbas said. He is insisting that Hamas will not govern Gaza, but he also called for an interim committee led by the PA to take temporary control of the territory. I mean, does the PA have the legitimacy and capacity to govern Gaza and a future state? And if not, what sort of reforms or new leadership structures are necessary?
Yes, this has been sort of the music behind the words for a long, long time, that the only solution one could imagine would be some reformed PA under some tutelage of some Arab states, or maybe even including the United States. And that with Hamas obviously excluded, that still might be possible. But with each passing day, it seems like it's less and less likely. That was something we thought about 6 months ago. And I think the Israelis were actually thinking about it at that point, too, that if they could get a really reformed PA with new leadership, a lot younger leadership, and give them some tutelage by Arab countries and maybe even, as I said, the United States, that might be a possibility. But that it also seems like it's gotten less and less possible as things on the ground have marched on. The accusations of genocide are rife, and that's not going to go away as Israel proceeds into the future. So it does look to me like, for all the good vibes and good talk, we're still pretty much stuck where we were before, with Israeli occupation of Gaza and maybe kind of de facto occupation of the West Bank as well.
Well, Professor, in the context of what you've just said, I want to ask you about support for Hamas. Is it really strong, and does it really exist among Palestinians in Gaza at this point? Because we heard a senior Hamas official, Ghazi Hamad, refusing to accept responsibility for October 7th. He was very unapologetic about the casualties in Gaza. In fact, he told CNN it's created a golden moment for the Palestinian cause. So do you see Palestinians seeing things the same way as all, amid all this death and destruction?
Well, certainly Hamas has never been terribly popular in Gaza, because when they ran it, they didn't run it very well. And so they've never been particularly popular there. They've been in some ways more popular on the West Bank. And this standing up to Israel, obviously has, I think, increased their popularity, at least in the West Bank. The suffering is so much in Gaza that it's got to be that at least some people have to put some blame on Hamas for setting loose all this terror. But every time something bad happens, every time Israel does some attack, it probably does increase support for Hamas. That's been the pattern, unfortunately, for Israel through the years, that every time it tries to tamp down the intifada or something like that, it just increases the recruitment for the groups it dislikes and worries most about.
Professor Hamad is a Hamas negotiator who survived Israel's strike in Doha. So I'm wondering, do his comments tell you anything about the militant group's position as far as a ceasefire and full compliance with Israel's demands are concerned?
I think they certainly want a ceasefire. That would be in their interest, but they're going to insist on a ceasefire that's sort of on their ceasefire that isn't just a pause, after which Israel comes back and does more of the things they've been doing. So they're going to, I think, insist on a serious ceasefire, which doesn't seem to be any part of Mr. Netanyahu's imaginings. And they're going to obviously continue to use the hostages as their ace card, as their card in the hole, the one thing they've got that they might use to bargain with Israel. So that makes, it seems to me, the prospects for a ceasefire not very good, as has been the case for now some months, really.
And Professor, what are your thoughts on Mr. Trump's pledge, publicly stating that he won't allow Israel to annex the West Bank? I mean, can the U.S. leader realistically enforce it if Netanyahu decides to push forward with annexation?
I think he could. Whether he will or not is a question. We know that this may be another way of sort of talking hard and then trying to escape this other crisis that he can't solve. He's done that with Ukraine, where he promised to settle it in a day and hasn't been able to move it in months. So he could, I think, if he were prepared to use the full weight of American support and arms deliveries, he probably could twist Netanyahu's arms into at least not formally annexing the West Bank. But with him, it's never clear whether this is tough talk that's going to go away immediately as he loses interest in this particular issue. So I think it's really very hard to say. It's the right thing to say and the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. Whether it gets followed up with those things that might actually make it work. That's always been the challenge with Mr. Trump, who talks big and then, as they say, always chickens out.
Yep, understood. President Trump also presented a new peace plan to Arab and Islamic countries this week at the UN. What's known about this plan? And also, have you heard anything about how it was received by these Arab and Islamic leaders?
I have not heard much, no. It's a new peace plan is a good idea, and trying to inject some new ideas. And it is, again, a kind of paradoxical situation. We hear that Syria and maybe even Lebanon are prepared to do some deal with Israel. I suppose that only underscores the fact that Israel has proved yet again that it is by far the most important, most powerful military force in the region. So there are things going on, and let us hope that some of these things that look like they're a little subterranean, a new peace plan, may actually have some possibility of making things better. Certainly the situation in Gaza is just simply intolerable, and the idea that it continues and the world let it continues and the United States lets it continue is really, I think, intolerable.
Okay, Professor Treverton, thank you very much for your time and your insight this morning. Professor of the Practice of International Relations and Spatial Sciences at the University of Southern California.